At Christmas dinner, my dad shouted, "Get out, paying bills doesn't make you family." Mom leaned in and whispered, "You're just jealous of your sister." I just smiled and left her with the $9,600 bill. By the next morning, cops, tears, chaos, and my phone was blowing up with frantic calls. Imagine pouring your soul, your entire paycheck, into the very people who always looked right through you. 4 years I told myself, one more sacrifice, one more holiday, and they'll finally see me. But last Christmas, instead of gratitude, I was told I wasn't family. Accused of jealousy. Kicked out on Christmas night by the people I'd given everything to. What happened next didn't just break my heart. It shook their entire world to its core. And you won't believe how quickly everything flipped. Okay, so let's rewind. My name's Hannah, I'm 34 now, and I always thought Christmas was about bringing people closer. But for me, it became a brutal reminder of where I stood in my family. It all started back in Lansing, Michigan, in a little blue house that always felt smaller on the inside. My dad, Robert, was a shift manager at the auto plant, and my mom, Linda, a part-time receptionist. They worked hard, but you could always feel this thing in the air, this quiet tension. Then 2010 hit. The plant downsized and Dad was laid off. Just like that, the pride he carried gone. My parents, who had always been so stable, suddenly weren't. I was in college, but I remember coming home to this suffocating silence. Dad in his recliner, remote slipping, shoulders slumped. Mom trying to stretch her paycheck, but overdue notices piled up. Arguments, hushed and bitter, started seeping through the walls at night. That's when I really felt the instability, the fear. But even before that, I knew my place. I was the reliable one, the eldest, the one who never caused trouble. Jessica, my sister, 6 years younger, she was the star. Seriously, she scraped by with a C average, and it was a national holiday. I still remember one Christmas. A brand new shiny pink bike for Jessica, ribbons fluttering. Mom was clapping, Jessica was squealing, and Dad was beaming, adjusting her training wheels. I stood there with my straight-A report card just waiting. Dad glanced over, a quick pat on the shoulder. "Keep it up, kiddo." Then he turned right back to Jessica. That was it. That's when I knew. Doing well, being good, it would never be enough to make me special. It wasn't just the bike. Jessica always got more. The bigger bedroom, new clothes, while mine were hand-me-downs. At school events, Dad's voice would boom for her even if it was just a participation ribbon. Me? When I won an academic award, his applause was polite, almost absent. Once when I was 10, Jessica came home with a 60% on a math test. Mom kissed her forehead, said, "You did your best, sweetheart," and announced an ice cream celebration. That same week, I'd won the regional spelling bee. The ribbon stayed folded in my backpack. No one asked. I said nothing. That night I lay awake just staring at the ceiling, wondering why my best felt like nothing. Jessica learned quickly how to play the part. She just expected the applause. She'd interrupt me at dinner, and if I objected, Dad would scold me for being too harsh. Mom always said Jessica was sensitive and needed extra encouragement. Me? I was strong enough to manage without it. Years blurred into a pattern. Jessica's confidence soared, fueled by endless praise. I became the quiet achiever, always chasing a recognition I never quite reached. I thought if I graduated with honors, then they'd be proud. Or if Jessica failed, then they'd see the weight I'd carried. But it never happened. When Dad lost his job, the favoritism got worse. Jessica, still in high school, got everything they could scrape together: cheerleading, hot meals, spending money. Me? I was juggling 3 jobs just to cover my college books and food. I told myself they were doing their best. But the truth was, their best was always for Jessica. That imbalance, that deep wound of being unseen, it shaped me. It wasn't just a phase. It was the foundation of my family. I was the dependable one who'd always figure it out. Jessica was the fragile star who needed constant support. And I carried that silent wound, that knowing that no matter how much I gave, it would never ever be enough. It's why years later, at a Christmas dinner that should have been full of joy, that deep festering imbalance finally exploded. And none of us could put it back together. In 2013, I graduated from Michigan State with a computer science degree. That diploma felt like my ticket, my way out of the shadow. I'd powered through 4 years of student loans, library shifts, tutoring gigs, fueled by endless coffee. I finally thought I'd earned my freedom. But even as I crossed that stage, I knew I was still carrying a weight I couldn't put down. Those early years, brutal. Rent was sky high and I was buried in debt. While my friends jetted off for summer trips or internships in New York, I was working double shifts at a diner, balancing trays of greasy food, just trying to keep up with interest payments. Then, in 2015, a miracle. I landed my first real job in Detroit. The salary felt like a fortune. I got a modest apartment, bought a used Honda Civic, and for the first time since childhood, I actually felt a flicker of pride. I could breathe. That's when the calls started. At first, Mom's voice was sweet, just checking in. "How's work? Met anyone?" But soon the tone shifted. Late fees. A roof that needed fixing. Dad's unemployment checks gone. One night, she cried quietly into the phone, talking about the car possibly being repossessed. I sat on my apartment floor, looking at my own stack of bills, and felt this suffocating guilt rise in my chest. So I offered to help. It started as a one-time thing, just to get them caught up. Then it became a monthly mortgage payment. $800. Add $400 for utilities. $600 for the car. Suddenly, I was covering almost every major expense they had. Phones, internet, even their streaming services. By the time you added it all up, it was almost $30,000 a year. Do you know what that adds up to? Over 8 years, nearly $250,000. Money that could have been my retirement. A down payment on my own house. Money that could have let me truly breathe. Instead, it vanished into the black hole of their household. Barely a thank you ever uttered. Jessica, meanwhile, was living a completely different life. After high school, it was culinary school funded by my parents. That failed. Then a coffee cart, funded by my parents, lasted 6 months. Then an online boutique. A crypto investment group. A wellness app. Each time, her big break. Each time a spectacular failure. And through it all, Mom and Dad stood by her, their support unwavering. I can't tell you how many times I sat at their kitchen table, listening to Dad brag about Jessica's entrepreneurial spirit, Mom beaming with pride. They spoke of her as if she were destined for greatness. I just sat there quiet, the daughter whose steady paychecks kept their lights on. If I dared mention the stress of supporting 2 households, Dad would just wave me off. Family helps family, he'd say. But it never ever felt like family was helping me. One night in 2017 still burns in my memory. I just come off a brutal 12-hour work week, driving to Lansing with bags of groceries and 2 cash envelopes mortgage car. Jessica breezed in a brand new leather jacket, announced she might need startup money for a podcast. Mom clapped. Dad reached for his wallet. No one asked about my project. No one even noticed the groceries I'd hauled in. That was my 20s. Long commutes. Late nights. Living in a tiny apartment while funneling thousands into a house I didn't even live in anymore. Vacations? Traded for furnace repairs. A new car? Postponed so they could get one. Every raise I earned disappeared before I could enjoy it. My best friend Lauren, she saw it. We were having cheap wine at my place one night, and she just leaned across the table, her eyes intense. Hannah, you do realize they're using you, right? I laughed it off nervously. They're my parents, Lauren. What am I supposed to do? Let them lose the house. She shook her head. There's a difference between helping and being an ATM with legs. Her words burrowed deep. The truth was ugly, hard to face. Every time I sent money, I told myself it was temporary. Things would get better. They never did. My parents got comfortable. Jessica got entitled. And I became the silent provider, the one who cleaned up their messes. Sometimes looking at my bank statements made me physically ill. $30,000. Gone. Year after year. Vacations skipped. A house never bought. Relationships strained because I was too tired, too broke. I told myself it was family duty. But the resentment? It grew heavier, colder with each passing year. By 28, I realized I hadn't lived a single year of my adult life without paying their bills. By 32, I'd given them more money than I'd saved for myself. Yet Jessica remained the star. Ambitious. Visionary. Me? I was never called anything at all. That's when the phrase formed in my mind, sharp and bitter. Asterisk, I wasn't a daughter. I was a walking ATM. Asterisk, and the worst part? They didn't even see it as unusual. It was just my role, carved in stone since childhood. Even now, the ache of those years is so real. The long drives, the quiet phone calls, the way I swallowed my frustration until it hardened into silence. I convinced myself love was worth the sacrifice. But the truth was written in every canceled vacation, every sleepless night, every empty savings account. I was their safety net, their plan B. Jessica was their dream. That imbalance born in childhood had only festered, leading me, step by agonizing step, to a breaking point I never saw coming. Lauren, my closest friend since college, she saw it clearest. We'd survive on stale muffins and caffeine back then. Now she was teaching English in Ann Arbor, and I'd drive out to see her. We'd open a bottle of wine, talk until midnight. After one of my usual complaints about another unexpected bill, she put her glass down hard. Her dark eyes were so steady, I shifted uncomfortably. Hannah, they are absolutely taking advantage of you. I tried to laugh it off, swirling my wine. They're my parents. What am I supposed to do, Lauren? Let them get the lights shut off. She shook her head slowly, like she'd heard this script 100 times. That's exactly what I mean. You think their survival depends on you. Doesn't. You're holding everything together while they treat you like the reliable backup plan. The words caught in my throat. She was right. But I had trained myself not to look at it too closely. A week later, she came to my apartment. I had this glass jar on my desk, an emergency fund in black marker. Every month, after sending money to my parents, I'd scrape whatever small amount I could into it. A few 20-some change. My pathetic attempt at preparing for my future. Lauren picked it up. She turned it in her hands, the coins clinking. Then she laughed, a sharp sound that startled me. Hannah, that's not an emergency fund. That's your guilt jar. I frowned confused. What do you mean? She sat down leaning forward. You put money in there for them, don't you? You think if you have it ready when they call you can bail them out. That's not savings. That's you carrying their weight before they even ask. Her words stung, because they were true. I opened my mouth to deny it, but she kept going. Every time you put $1 in here, you're reminding yourself that their needs come before yours. That's not family, Hannah. That's manipulation. My face burned with embarrassment, with a rising defensive anger. Even though I knew she was right. They're my parents, I repeated softer this time. They gave me everything when I was growing up. Lauren raised an eyebrow. Did they? Did they really give you everything? Or did they give Jessica everything? While you figured out the rest on your own? That question hung in the air. I wanted to snap back to defend Mom and Dad, but my mind went blank. All I saw were memories. Jessica's bike under the tree. My spelling bee ribbon tucked away. Dad's voice booming for her, while I stood on stage alone. Lauren must have seen it in my eyes, because her voice softened. I'm not saying cut them off tomorrow. I'm saying you deserve to live your own life without being drained dry. At some point you have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? That night after she left, I stared at that jar. Guilt. The word echoed. I'd always seen it as responsibility, proof I was doing the right thing. Now it looked like a chain, tying me to a family who'd never noticed the sacrifices behind it. The next morning Mom called. Sweet. Almost rehearsed. Hannah, honey, the water heater's gone out again. It's freezing. I glanced at the jar. I could practically feel Lauren's judgment in the silent apartment. I transferred the money anyway. I'll rebuild my savings later, I muttered to myself. That week at work, my manager actually congratulated me on a big project, praised my leadership. My coworkers even clapped. For a moment I felt the pride I'd chased my whole life. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Just got a new leather jacket. You wouldn't believe the deal I found. I knew without asking Mom or Dad had paid for it. That pride dissolved instantly, replaced by something bitter and cold. Lauren invited me over again the next weekend. They asked for money again, didn't they? She said, just knowing. I sighed, nodding. She exhaled sharply. Hannah, this isn't sustainable. You're building a life for yourself. They're adults. They can figure it out. I wanted to tell her she didn't understand that family was different, that I owed them. But even as the words formed, they rang hollow. What had they really given me besides expectations? The constant reminder that Jessica's failures mattered more than my successes? That night I couldn't sleep. The hum of the fridge, the distant traffic. The jar faintly glowing in the streetlight. Lauren's face calling it my guilt jar. She was right. It wasn't just money. It was a lifetime of being trained to believe my worth came from what I provided, not who I was. For the first time I wondered, what if I just stopped? What if the next time Mom called I said no? The thought terrified me, but it also sent a strange ripple of relief through my chest. Like opening a window in a stifling room. The question wouldn't go away. Was I truly helping them? Or was I letting myself be used because facing the truth felt too heavy? I closed my eyes, letting sleep drag me under, knowing the doubt had been planted. Nothing would ever feel the same again. December 2023. I just wrapped up the biggest project of my career at Midwest FinTech Solutions. My team delivered ahead of schedule, client feedback was stellar, and my manager was talking promotion. For the first time in years, I felt like my hard work was finally paying off for me. Not for my parents' bills. That glow lasted less than a day. Mom called, her voice a mix of casual and commanding. Hannah, we've been thinking. It might be best if you host Christmas this year. Our house feels a bit cramped, and your apartment has such a nice layout. My apartment? It was barely big enough for me, but I could already picture her picking apart every corner if I said no. So I said, sure, of course. I'll handle it. That night I made lists. Turkey, ham, organic veggies, pies, good wine, decorations. Lauren came to the grocery store with me. The total at the register? Over $400. I winced as I swiped my card. Lauren just gave me that look. You realize none of them are going to appreciate this, right? I shrugged, trying to ignore the sting. Maybe this year will be different. It's Christmas. For a few days I let myself believe it. Candles on the table, my parents smiling, Jessica actually helping instead of complaining. I poured all my hope into cooking, planning, transforming my small space into something warm and welcoming. Then 3 days before Christmas the phone rang again. Mom. Her voice was flat, dismissive. Hannah, we've decided it's better if we just do Christmas here at our place. Aunt Barbara wants to see the house, and you know how Dad prefers being home. I just sat there, staring at the bags of groceries I'd already started prepping. But, I've bought everything, I said quietly. I've been planning for weeks. Her answer was simple. Just bring it all here. It'll be cozier. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen counter in stunned silence. $400. Days of planning, brushed aside with one sentence. I wanted to scream. But instead I went to the fridge, rearranged containers and told myself, asterisk, it'll be fine. I'll carry it all over. I'll make it work. Asterisk that week I even skipped my company holiday party. A chance to network with executives for my potential promotion because I was drowning in lists for their dinner. Lauren called me, heard the exhaustion. Hannah, this is exactly what I warned you about. They move the line every time. I tried to laugh it off. It's Christmas, Lauren. I just want it to go smoothly. There was a long pause. Then she said, smooth for them maybe. Not for you. Her words echoed as I scrubbed counters and packed casseroles. I thought of the pride my boss had shown me. For once I was being recognized. Yet here I was putting everything into a holiday that would earn me nothing but a shrug. Still Christmas Eve I loaded my car with boxes, bags, trays. Wine in the trunk, pies carefully covered. I drove toward Lansing, the radio playing carols, road slick with slush. I gripped the wheel, rehearsing how to keep my patience. When I pulled into their driveway, the house looked tired but festive. Dad opened the door, glanced at my heavy bags and said, "You're blocking the driveway. Jessica will need to park there." He didn't offer to help. Mom came out, her eyes sweeping over my sweater dress. "Look at you all dressed up. Some of us have been cooking since 6 this morning." I forced a smile. "I brought everything prepped ready to cook. The oven's yours." She just turned back to her own stuffing. "You know your father only likes my recipe." I stood there with all my effort, my money, my time, and said nothing. I washed my hands, tied on an apron, and started arranging dishes, because a tiny fragile hope still flickered. Asterisk maybe, just maybe, if I worked hard enough this Christmas would be different. They would finally see me. Asterisk that hope carried me through the evening. I cooked. I smiled. I ignored the cutting remarks. I just kept going. Christmas morning. The drive back to Lansing, trunk full. Snow-dusted highway, sharp December air. My chest felt tight pulling into their driveway. My car, a mid-range sedan I'd worked hard for, felt like an accomplishment. Dad stepped out as I unloaded. His eyes slid over my car. "Seems awfully fancy for someone your age," he muttered. I gripped the bag tighter. "It's just reliable, Dad. I need it for work." He shrugged, walked back inside. "No help." Again. Mom appeared in the doorway as I set the food down. "All dressed up," she said, her faint smile not reaching her eyes. "Some of us have been busy since dawn. No time for all that." She waved a hand at my hair and my simple burgundy dress. I swallowed the sting. I thought it would be nice to look festive. She was already stirring stuffing. The smell filled the kitchen, but it wasn't warmth. It was territory. "Just don't overseason the potatoes. You know your father only likes mine. Sharp. Familiar. Not one thank you for the groceries for the hours of prep." Dad grabbed a beer. "You spent a lot, didn't you? Should probably be saving instead of throwing money at food." Before I could respond, he was gone. The weight of their dismissals pressed down. I kept busy arranging spoons, setting the table with the cloth I'd brought, tucking little pine sprigs. I wanted them to see the effort. "Maybe next year stick with plain napkins," Mom said. "This looks a little too much." I bit my tongue. The room felt colder than the snow outside. My hand shook as I adjusted plates, just needing something to do. Dad yelled at the football game on TV. Mom hummed, tasting her stuffing, oblivious to my roasted vegetables. Every dish I brought in felt like walking into a wall of indifference. My paycheck, my energy, all of it. And all I got were sideways comments. Then the doorbell rang. Cheerful greetings. Aunt Barbara, Uncle George, Natalie. Mom's voice suddenly warm, full of the affection I'd craved all morning. Barbara hugged me. "You look wonderful, dear." Natalie offered to help in the kitchen. A small, precious acknowledgement that brought tears to my eyes. But the house still felt heavy. Every parental comment, a reminder I was out of place. Too polished. Too independent. Too much. My patience was gone. I checked the turkey, perfectly browned, and a wave of exhaustion crashed over me. I'd been smiling for hours, ignoring the sting, the lack of gratitude. Closing the oven door, I knew no amount of effort would ever make them see me. The house, full of holiday scents, felt thick with tension. The celebration hadn't even truly begun, and I was already suffocating. Then the front door burst open. Jessica's laugh, loud, unapologetic. An hour late. Her boots clicked like she owned the place. Dad sprang up, his face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen all day. "There she is. The star of the show." Mom rushed, arms wide, embracing her with desperate affection. Jessica tossed her shiny hair. She looked like she just walked onto a stage built just for her. "Sorry I'm late. Had to stop by a friend's to talk about my new business idea." Dad beamed like she just won the lottery. I stood in the kitchen doorway, wiping my hands, trying to calm the fire rising in my chest. This was the contrast. My quiet arrival. Her grand entrance. Jessica dropped her purse, crossed her legs. "So I've been working on something big. A fitness app. It's going to revolutionize home workouts." Dad leaned forward, nodding like she was unveiling a masterpiece. "Tell us more, sweetheart." Jessica's eyes sparkled. "I've got the concept all mapped out. Just needs funding. Maybe $40,000 for the prototype and marketing. Once it takes off, it'll be huge." Mom clasped her hands. Incredible, Jess. You always think so big. Dad grinned, already convinced of her success. My pulse quickened. I took a slow breath. What makes it different from the hundreds of apps already on the market? Do you have developers? Have you researched the failure rate in that industry? Jessica's smile faltered. She waved her hand dismissively. I'm not worried about competition. Mine will have a unique angle. You wouldn't understand, Hannah. I worked in tech. I knew this. I actually work in tech, Jess. I know how investors think. You need more than just an idea. Before I could finish, Mom cut in sharply. Don't ruin Christmas, Hannah. Let your sister share her dream without all the criticism. The room went silent. Jessica smirked, leaned back. You know what your problem is, Hannah? You're so boring. Always safe. Always stuck in your little cubicle world. Some of us actually take risks. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Boring. Safe. I thought of the 2 a.m. coding sessions. The weekends sacrificed. The money I'd poured into keeping this very house afloat. I wanted to scream about her risks. That always ended in disaster. The food truck that never launched. The boutique that ate thousands of mom and dad's savings. The crypto scheme that left them almost broke. I couldn't stop myself. Jess, how many times have you borrowed money and never paid it back? How many projects have you started only to drop them when it got hard? The food truck, the boutique, the crypto scheme, all disasters. All funded by mom and dad. And when that wasn't enough, by me. Jessica flushed crimson. That's different. At least I'm trying to do something big with my life. You're just jealous. Dad's voice thundered. Enough, Hannah. Don't drag down your sister. Tonight is about family. Family. The word stung like a slap. I bit the inside of my cheek, turned back to the kitchen, stirring potatoes, my hands trembling. Behind me, Jessica was laughing again, spinning her dream as if my questions had never been asked. Mom's hums, Dad's booming voice, their unwavering faith in her. Natalie came in quietly, helping me set the table. Don't let her get to you, she whispered. We all know how it goes. A tight smile. Grateful. Too tired to answer. As I carefully placed silverware, Jessica's voice still carried, describing her app, influencers, sponsorships. Each word a reminder of the chasm between us. How she could fail a dozen times and still be praised for dreaming, while I was dismissed for building something real. The candles were lit. The atmosphere had shifted. For Mom and Dad, the holiday had truly begun the moment Jessica walked in. For me, the air was heavier than ever. The sharp edge of dismissal. The familiar ache of being an outsider in my own family. The table was finally set. Dishes steaming, silverware shining. I carried the last tray of roasted vegetables, my hands trembling slightly. Everyone took their seats. Dad at the head, Jessica right beside him, Mom across from her. Me? Far end. Wedged between Aunt Barbara and Natalie. As if all my work meant nothing. Dad cleared his throat. Silence except for the fireplace crackle. He bowed his head. Lord, we thank you for this food. For bringing us together. And for the blessing of having Jessica home with us. Strong. Deliberate. I lifted my eyes just for a second, waiting for my name. For any acknowledgement of what I'd made possible. It never came. Amen, we murmured. As dishes passed, Jessica, with a flourish, began her pitch again. So I have something to share. It's a fitness app. Unlike anything on the market. She talked about $40,000 for the prototype. Changing the game. Mom clasped her hands, beaming. Incredible, Jess. You always think so big. Dad puffed out chest. Our daughter, the entrepreneur. My stomach churned. I stabbed at my mashed potatoes. What makes this app different from the hundreds already out there? Have you done any research? Jessica's smile tightened. Hannah, you always worry too much. It'll have a unique angle. I'm not sharing specifics. People steal ideas. Investors will need more than just an idea, Jess. They'll want numbers, proof, strategy. Mom cut in, voice like a knife. Don't ruin Christmas with your negativity. Let your sister dream. Silence. The clinking of silverware. Jessica smirked. You know what your problem is, Hannah? You live such a boring little life. Safe jobs, safe choices. You're too afraid to take risks, and that's why you'll never do anything extraordinary. Her words echoed what my parents had always implied. Asterisk boring? Afraid. Asterisk I thought of the 2 a.m. coding sessions, the projects I'd led, the sacrifices, the bills I paid month after month to keep this very house standing. My blood pulsed hot in my ears. I set down my fork, looked directly at Jessica. My voice steady, dangerously calm. You want to talk about risks? How many times have you borrowed money and never paid it back? How many ventures have you started and abandoned when it got too hard? The food truck, the boutique, the crypto scheme, all disasters. All funded by Mom and Dad. And when that wasn't enough, by me. Jessica's face went crimson. That's different. At least I'm brave enough to try. You just hide behind your paycheck. Dad's voice thundered. Enough. Stop tearing your sister down. I took a slow, deep breath. I'm not tearing anyone down. I'm telling the truth. For 8 years I have been paying for this house to stand. $800 a month for the mortgage. $400 for utilities. $600 for car payments. Add insurance, phones, internet, streaming and emergencies. Every year nearly $30,000. Over 8 years that's close to $250,000. Forks froze. Aunt Barbara's eyes widened. Uncle George leaned back, stunned. Natalie stared, hearing it all for the first time. Jessica's mouth opened but no sound came out. Mom's face drained of color, her hand shaking as she set down her wine. Dad slammed his fist on the table. Plates rattled. You think paying bills makes you family? It doesn't. Family is about loyalty, not money. Get out. Get out. From my own father. In the home I've been quietly supporting for years. The words hit harder than his fist. I swallowed, the room spinning. Mom leaned closer, her voice sharp, quiet, meant only for me. You're just jealous of your sister. You always have been. That was the knife twisting deeper. After all the sleepless nights, the missed vacations, the sacrifices. Jealousy. That's how she saw me. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping. My hands were steady now, but my chest burned. Fine. My voice was calm, clear. If that's how you feel, then let her pay the bills. Gasps. Jessica's face went scarlet. She looked to Mom and Dad, desperate for them to shield her. Dad glared, but his fury didn't scare me anymore. Aunt Barbara reached out, then stopped. Uncle George shook his head, disbelief clouding his face. Natalie sat frozen, wide-eyed. I laid my napkin gently on the table. I'm done pretending. I'm done carrying the weight and being treated like I don't exist. The room was silent, thick with shock. The only sound, the faint whistle of wind outside. The steady beat of my heart. I grabbed my purse, slung it over my shoulder, and looked at the table. Rage, guilt, shock, shame, all painted on their faces. Then I turned. Each step away from that table felt like a lifetime of release. Natalie caught up to me in the hallway, her hand brushing my arm. Her voice trembled, but it was strong. Please don't let them make you feel small, Hannah. We all see how much you do, even if they never say it. Her eyes held genuine concern, something I'd never received from my own parents. I managed a weak smile, squeezed her hand and whispered, "Thank you." Then I pulled my coat tight and stepped out into the brutal cold. The air hit me like ice. I stood on the porch, staring at the snow swirling under the streetlight. Muffled voices rose from inside, but I didn't care. My car sat alone, a thin layer of frost coating the windshield. I slid into the driver's seat, fingers stiff as I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, and with it, a sob that tore from my chest. I drove through Lansing, tears blurring the streetlights into streaks of gold. By the highway, the sobs had quieted to shaky breaths. But I couldn't face my empty apartment yet. On impulse, I turned off at an exit, to Riverside Park. The Grand River was dark, trees bare. I parked at the overlook, shut off the engine. The silence was deafening. I buried my face in my hands and finally let go, crying until my whole body shook. Paying bills doesn't make you family. You're just jealous. 8 years of sacrifice pressed down, threatening to crush me. A soft knock on my window startled me. Lauren. Her face was pale from the cold, but her eyes held so much determination. I unlocked the door, and she slid in, wrapping her arms around me without a word. I don't know what happened exactly, she murmured, but I know you're done. You can't keep letting them bleed you dry. I wiped my eyes and poured out everything. The prayer that never mentioned me. Jessica's at pitch, the outburst, Dad screaming, "Get out." Lauren listened, her hand steady on my arm. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Hannah, it's time. You've carried them long enough. They disowned you tonight. You have to let them live without you. Her words landed with a clarity I'd never allowed myself before. I thought of my apartment, of that guilt jar on my shelf. Every single bill drafted from my account. Every emergency I'd solved, while they just kept praising Jessica for her dreams. Right there, in the cold car, I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark. My fingers flew across the keys as I pulled up my financial records. Mortgage, $800 a month. Utilities, $400. Car payments, $600. Insurance, $180. Phones, $120. Internet and cable, $150. Streaming, $45. Emergency extras, $200. I typed the totals, line by line. The numbers stared back at me, cold and undeniable. Nearly $30,000 a year. Over 8 years, close to $250,000. My hands trembled as I read it again. And again. I could have bought a house with that money. I could have built an investment portfolio. I could have built my own future. Instead, I had built nothing but their comfort. And in return, I was told I didn't belong. Lauren leaned closer, her voice low but steady. This is your proof. This is everything you have done. It's time to stop. I closed my eyes, letting that number burn itself into my mind. 4 years, I had equated sacrifice with love. I thought if I gave enough, one day, they would finally see me. But love was never returned. Only expectation. When I opened my eyes again, the tears had dried. My chest still ached, but beneath the pain was something new. Resolve. For the first time, I wasn't just mourning what I'd lost. I was seeing the shape of what I could reclaim. I shut the laptop gently. I'm done, I whispered, more to myself than to Lauren. This ends now. Lauren nodded, her eyes soft with pride. Good. It's time you took back your life. We sat in silence for a while, the river stretching dark and endless before us. The cold seeped through the windows. Yet, for the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom stirring in my chest. When I finally started the car, I wasn't running from the house I'd left. I was driving towards something new. I didn't know what it would look like, but I knew the cycle was broken. The guilt jar would no longer define me. I pulled into my apartment parking lot. The streets were empty, the world quiet under a blanket of snow. I carried the laptop upstairs, set it on my desk, and stared at that spreadsheet one last time. The numbers still glared back, but now it didn't feel like a chain. It felt like a map, showing me every step I had taken, and pointing to the place where I would finally stop. I leaned back in my chair, let out a long breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't planning how to save them. I was planning how to save myself. I turned the laptop back on. It was almost midnight, but I felt a new kind of energy coursing through me. I opened every account I'd been managing for years. The mortgage. My name, the auto payment set for the first of every month. My finger hovered over the cancel button. One moment. Then I clicked. Are you sure? Yes. The weight that lifted from my chest was immediate. A sudden, exhilarating lightness. Next, the utilities. Electric, water, gas. All linked to my debit card, quietly draining me. I removed my information, typed in Dad's full name, forwarded the login details to his email. Billing responsibility transferred. I imagined their faces when that first statement arrived. The car loans were harder. I remembered signing that first payment, telling myself it was temporary. I remembered Dad handing Jessica the keys to their new car like he'd earned them, while I stood there with empty hands. Now my name was tied to both vehicles. I took a steadying breath, called the lender, navigated the automated prompts until I reached a real person. Calmly, I explained I was no longer responsible. Payments must revert to Robert and Linda Miller. She confirmed it. Paperwork would be mailed. I hung up, palms damp, but my heart? Steady. Insurance was next. Auto, home, medical. Every policy tied to my accounts. Line by line, I sent cancellation notices. I even copied Mom on the emails with a short, blunt note. Asterisk, you are now responsible for these premiums. I will not be renewing coverage. Asterisk, then the family cell phone plan. That one actually made me laugh, a bitter hollow sound. For years, they complained about the bill while refusing to drop Jessica's newest iPhone upgrade. I opened the provider's site, changed the password, removed every device except mine. Another email. Service for your numbers will be suspended in 3 days unless you create your own plan. Internet and cable followed. The login showed streaming marathons, late-night game shows, and endless data usage. All funded by me without a word. I deleted my card, removed their devices. For the first time in 8 years, their Wi-Fi would not be mine to provide. Finally, the home security system. My idea, after a neighbor's break-in. Nearly $1,000 on cameras, sensors, smart locks. I convinced myself I was keeping them safe. Now I opened the dashboard, exported their settings, and pressed the shutdown button. The screen warned, all devices will go offline within minutes. I clicked anyway. Through the camera feed, I saw the Christmas tree lights flicker once, then go dark. The living room plunged into shadow. The smart thermostat disconnected. The locks reset. One by one, the icons grayed out. The house I protected for years sat in complete silence. Powerless. Unguarded. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. It felt like watching the final page of a chapter in my life. That house was no longer my burden. My parents would wake to darkness, confusion, maybe even panic. But for me, it was liberation. The clock read nearly midnight. I closed the laptop. My apartment was quiet, but not the suffocating quiet I'd known before. This quiet felt earned. I poured a glass of water, sat by the window watching the snow fall steadily. For the first time in almost a decade, no payments hung over my head. No alerts. No emergencies pulling me back into their orbit. The accounts were closed. The ties severed. As I sipped the water, I thought of Dad's words. Paying bills doesn't make you family. He was right in a way. Not the way he intended. Family isn't proven through money. But it's also not destroyed by refusing to be used. I set the glass down, turned off the lamp. The darkness settled around me. This time, it wasn't frightening. It was peaceful. And as I climbed into bed, I knew the real storm would arrive in the morning. The sun was high when I finally stirred. My head felt heavy, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of what I had done. I reached for my phone. The screen lit up with more notifications than I'd ever seen. 43 missed calls, 68 unread texts, a dozen voicemails. My chest tightened. The storm had broken. The first voicemail was Mom. High-pitched, frantic. Hannah, what is going on? The power's out. The heat shut off. Everything stopped working. We can't even make coffee. You need to fix this right now. The second was Dad. Cold. Cutting. Whatever game you are playing, it ends today. You have until noon to restore the accounts or I'm contacting our lawyer. This is elder abuse, Hannah, and it is against the law. Jessica's voice came next. Shrill. Furious. You've ruined Christmas. Do you even realize what you've done? I was supposed to have an important meeting today, and now I can't even leave because the car's gone. You are pathetic, Hannah. Fix this or don't bother calling yourself my sister. The next message twisted the knife deeper. Mom again, her voice trembling. Your father had chest pains this morning. He's at the hospital now. The stress of what you did pushed him over the edge. If anything happens to him, it will be on you. Please, Hannah, call me back. My stomach dropped. Guilt flooded me. Had I really caused a heart attack? Was my father in a hospital bed because I finally stood up for myself? Before panic swallowed me whole, another notification buzzed. A text from Natalie. Asterisk, don't believe what they're saying. No one is at the hospital. They're at the house with police officers. Uncle Robert looks fine, just angry. Asterisk, I let out a shaky breath. Scrolled further. Another voicemail. Dad again, voice booming with rage. You think you can humiliate us? I told the officers everything. You've hacked our accounts. You're going to regret this. I opened the security app on my laptop, half afraid I'd already lost access. But no, the backup feed still connected. The screen flickered to life. The living room of the house I'd once protected. There they were, all three. Dad, pacing red-faced, waving his arms at two uniformed police officers who looked more confused than convinced. Mom sat on the couch, wringing her hands, not a single tear on her face despite the hospital voicemail. Jessica stood by the Christmas tree, arms crossed, scowling like a teenager who'd just been grounded. The cameras had no sound, but their body language told me everything. Dad wasn't sick. He was furious. Mom wasn't broken. She was pretending. Jessica wasn't a victim. She was fuming at losing control. I sat back in my chair, the knot of guilt dissolving as quickly as it had formed. Their lie. Exposed before it even had time to take root. Another text from Natalie. Asterisk, the police are leaving soon. They told your parents this is a civil matter. Everyone is upset, but honestly they looked embarrassed when the officers didn't take their side. Asterisk, embarrassed. That was new. For years they'd hidden behind me. Behind the comfort I provided. Behind the image of a perfect family. But now the curtain had been pulled back. Neighbors would see the police cars. Relatives would hear whispers. Their pride had cracked. And I hadn't even needed to raise my voice. Curiosity pulled me to one more voicemail. Mom again, her voice lower this time, almost pleading. Hannah, please. The mortgage company called. They said the payment was canceled. What are we supposed to do? We don't have that kind of money. Just come over, talk this out. We can fix this as a family. Family. The word no longer stung. It rang hollow, stripped of the power it once held over me. I set the phone down, letting it buzz again. I didn't answer. For the first time in years, their chaos was not mine to manage. The lies, the threats, the dramatics. They could keep all of it. I turned back to the laptop. The frozen feed still showed the darkened living room. Christmas tree lights off. The house wrapped in shadows. It was more than a technical shutdown. It was a symbol. The control they had over me, the expectation, the guilt. It had all gone out, just as suddenly as those lights. The storm had come, exactly as I'd expected. But for the first time I was standing on the outside of it, watching rather than drowning. And as the snow fell quietly outside my window, I realized their lies could no longer bind me. They had lost the power to keep me in the dark. Dad's voice boomed through my voicemail again that afternoon, harsher than ever. He barked that he'd already spoken with my cousin Gary, a lawyer. He claimed what I'd done was financial abuse. Swore papers were being drawn up, that I'd regret humiliating him in front of the neighbors. I stared at my phone. Then I pulled up Gary's number myself. We hadn't spoken in years, not since a family reunion where Jessica had paraded around with her fake boutique, and I quietly cleaned up the barbecue. Gary answered on the second ring, brisk but not unfriendly. Hannah? Long time. What's going on? I explained everything. The years of payments. The dinner table explosion. Dad's threats. When I finished there was silence. Then a laugh. Hannah, your father is bluffing. There's no law in Michigan or anywhere else requiring an adult child to financially support their parents. You were doing it voluntarily. If anything, continuing under those conditions could look like exploitation on their part. Not yours. He paused. And the accounts were in your name, correct? Yes, all of them, I replied. Then you had every legal right to close them. End of story. Relief washed over me so quickly my knees went weak. Thank you, Gary, I whispered, meaning it more than I expected. He cleared his throat. Honestly, Hannah, I'm glad you called. People have seen the way things work in your family for years. Maybe now it's time the truth comes out. Later that day, Aunt Barbara called. Her voice was tight. The police left hours ago, but the whole neighborhood saw. People are talking. Robert made such a scene. I'm sorry, honey, but you should know you're not the one they're criticizing. It's them. I pictured the squad cars, the flashing lights, neighbors peeking through curtains. The Millers, the proud family. Undone on Christmas morning. Uncle George called next. You did what you had to do, Hannah. We all know how much you've carried. Frankly, I'm surprised it took this long. But the most surprising call came that evening from Aunt Diane, Mom's older sister. Her voice cracked. I should have said something years ago. I saw how they favored Jessica, how they leaned on you, but every time I tried, your mother shut me out. She went quiet. People deserve to know the truth, Hannah. You've been keeping that family afloat while Jessica drained them dry. Her words struck like a bolt of clarity. It wasn't just me who knew. Others had seen it all along. The next day, Barbara and George went to my parents' house. Natalie later told me what happened. They sat in the living room, the air thick with embarrassment. Barbara firm. She'd watched me bring groceries year after year, watched me sacrifice vacations. Enough is enough. Diane backed her up, reminding them Jessica had borrowed thousands and never repaid a cent. Jessica tried to protest, but George cut her off. Everyone knows, Jess. We've watched you spin one scheme after another while Hannah quietly covered the basics. You've been lying to your own parents, letting them believe you were helping when it was Hannah all along. Natalie described the silence that followed. Mom's face drained. Dad's jaw clenched so tight he couldn't speak. And Jessica, for once in her life, had nothing to say. Her lips moved but no sound came. She sat there exposed with no defense left. That image gave me a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction. Sorrow for the years wasted, for the love I chased like a mirage. Satisfaction because finally the truth had been spoken out loud. Not just by me but by others who had seen, and who had chosen to stay silent until now. By evening more messages trickled in, from relatives who'd heard the story. Some sympathetic, some angry at my parents, few just curious. The narrative my parents had spun for years, Jessica, the golden child. Me, the distant one, had cracked wide open. I sat by my window that night, snow falling quietly over Detroit, and thought about justice. Not the kind in courtrooms, the quiet kind. The kind that comes when the truth can no longer be hidden. When the lies collapse under their own weight. Jessica's silence in that living room. All her bravado, all her big talk unmasked. My parents, who'd thrown me out of their Christmas dinner, now sitting in the wreckage of their pride. Forced to face what they'd ignored for far too long. The consequences had finally begun. Not by my hands but by the truth itself. And for the first time I didn't feel the need to fix anything. I only needed to let it play out. Winter turned to spring. The distance between me and my parents became more than just emotional. It was practical. Measured in bills they now had to pay, responsibilities they could no longer shift onto me. Natalie and Barbara kept me updated. Dad took a part-time security guard job. The man who once carried himself with the pride of a shift manager, now standing guard at a warehouse gate. Mom added more hours at the dental office, her cheerful work front hiding the exhaustion at home. Jessica, her fitness app dissolved like all the others. No family money to cushion her anymore. She got a job at a sporting goods store, folding leggings and selling sneakers. The irony was not lost on me. Their lives adjusted downward. Mine shifted upward. At Midwest FinTech, my successful project earned me more recognition than I'd ever expected. In March, my manager called me in. Leadership potential. A promotion that would have seemed impossible a year ago suddenly felt deserved. I poured my energy into work, not to prove myself to them but to me. Outside of work, I focused on healing. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Every Tuesday, in a small warm office, I poured out pieces of myself I'd never shared. The anger, the guilt, the endless hunger for validation. Slowly, week by week, the heaviness began to lift. In January, I joined a support group for adult children of toxic parents. Sitting in a circle of strangers, hearing stories so similar to mine, was both heartbreaking and liberating. We laughed about manipulations that once made us cry. We recognized patterns that had trapped us. We encouraged each other when doubt crept in. For the first time, I felt less alone. By April, I rewarded myself. A weekend trip to Chicago, a boutique hotel by the river. Years ago, I'd sent my parents there for Mom's birthday, footing the bill, barely a thank you. This time, I walked through Millennium Park alone, drank coffee at a rooftop cafe, savoring the luxury without guilt. That freedom tasted better than anything I'd ever known. It was on that trip I met Michael, a friend of a friend. An architect. Tall, thoughtful, with a laugh that filled the room without needing to be loud. I hesitated at first, unsure if I had the energy for anything new. But on our third date, when I finally told him my story, he reached across the table, squeezed my hand and said softly, "Family isn't who you're born to. Family is who treats you like you matter." Those words sank in deep. They reminded me of Barbara's calls, George's steady support, Diane's confession, Natalie's brave honesty. The people who stood by me after Christmas were the ones who deserved the title of family. They checked on me without demanding, celebrated my achievements without envy, loved me without conditions. Months later, I still heard whispers of my parents' struggles. They sold the old house, moved into a modest rental. Dad complained, but he kept working. Mom's health wavered. Jessica still spun stories, but no one was funding her anymore. Their world had changed. Part of me felt a flicker of pity, but I knew it wasn't mine to fix. Instead, I built something different. My apartment filled with laughter from friends. With quiet evenings, a life no longer chained to guilt. My savings account grew. My confidence grew. And with Michael by my side, I began to imagine a future that was truly mine, built not on sacrifice for others but on balance and choice. When I look back now at that Christmas night, I no longer feel only pain. I see it as the moment I was freed. The night the lies broke apart, and the truth finally took shape. The night I stopped begging to belong and started choosing where I did. If you've ever faced a family who made you feel less, who took your giving for granted, who confused loyalty with control, know this: you are not alone. And you have the right to step away, to heal, to build something better. I'd love to hear if my story resonates with you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members? What helped you find your strength? Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.